All right, it is finally time. So this show is January 11th, 1993, at the Manhattan Center, and I wanted to kind of give a look at where the industry was at this point because in January of 1993, pro wrestling was not in very good shape. I was looking at some numbers, like some attendance numbers, and I want to say, though I'm not exactly 100% sure about this, but I want to say like this time in wrestling, and we're talking, we're talking the big two, right? WWF and WWE or WCW. I think it's the coldest ever for the WWF at the time. In maybe the history since Vince expanded. We're talking from 84 to 93, so about 10 years. And business was just way down. I was looking at the business numbers in the Observer, and they were just decidedly down from the same time in both 91 and 92 as well. So this move to Raw, and also they created a show on the weekend that was a little bit more for kids called Mania, WWF Mania. This move was definitely to try and deliver a more interesting product because their fan base was dwindling. And what's crazy is WCW in December of 1992 was averaging less than 1,000 fans per show. Like how crazy is that, right? So we're talking about a super cold time in the industry. And it's almost like when you have this problem, like you obviously need to do something different. And I think Raw was part of that. But I think there was also and we saw this, right? Because, in the previous year, you move away from Hogan. You kind of have to move away from him because he's like negative news. But at the same time, by doing that, that the popularity of what people know as WWF is probably going to go down because he was such a big star and synonymous with your company. And so it's an opportunity to, we just got done talking about this, like building new stars, creating new talent. You see, obviously it's Bret Hart, right? He's the guy who's got the belt. You see guys like Razor Ramon, who not really new, but, he'd been around, but just, they're trying to bring him in as a new character to give him a little flavor. You see Yokozuna, who's the first match on the show. And so there's a decided a strategy to kind of be different and be younger and be a little bit more of like cutting edge. Because, the tagline for this show is like uncut, uncensored, whatever they kept saying. But there's a bit of a preamble there because this is what I'm actually going to talk about. In January of 1993, the two biggest stories are Ric Flair is leaving WWF and cuts a deal with WCW to go back to WCW. And the reason is because he and Vince McMahon pretty much have an agreement of sorts that says, if you're not going to be a main event guy here, then you can sort of be free to negotiate with somebody else. And at this time, after Flair, Flair's the champion for a good part of 1992. He is not going to be the top guy. Vince basically says, we're going to move you down the card a little bit. You're not going to be in the main events. We're going to move you down. And Flair's like, okay, then I want to leave. And that's basically what happens is he signs with WCW. At the same time, Hulk Hogan starts doing media. Now, he had been kind of dormant, like the Hulk Hogan story had been dormant for a while. And the steroid stuff, when he went on Arsenio Hall and said that he only used steroids a couple times and it was for, for a training or whatever he said. Which,
injury, I think it was, right?
Yeah, and which was not the strategy. Arsenio Hall's producer was like, that wasn't exactly what we thought he was going to say because he had it differently. And so now he is trying to explain himself in some media interviews. And he basically says, they didn't give me enough time. When you have a short amount of time to do an interview like that, you kind of, I didn't get to explain myself. So not like he was coming back to tell the truth necessarily, but he is kind of seemingly finagling himself back into the public eye again, and we will see him in a couple months on WWF TV. So, as I just said, we're sort of going into this like younger thing. Like the two biggest stories at this point in time are on Hogan and Flair. So it's while we're talking about Raw and this new thing, it's not like Vince was like gung ho as like, okay, we're cutting ties with all these older guys and, we're only going to bring in these younger guys. Cause he does bring back Hogan. Flair goes back to WCW. And he turns babyface and all that stuff. So that's kind of where we're at in January of 1993. And so that leads us to this show. Now, when you turned it on and you saw Macho Man, Vince McMahon, Rob Bartlett. Macho Man is definitely trying to be like young and hip and cool. And Vince McMahon is definitely trying to oversell Rob Bartlett as like this comedic genius. And Rob Bartlett is not very good at all. Like when you're watching this show and you sort of see this is your new, this is your new WWF, right? The old WWF is Primetime Wrestling, and we're getting rid of Gorilla and we're getting rid of Bobby. The new WWF is Macho Man and Vince and Rob Bartlett and a live show and a Manhattan Center audience. What did you think about that whole presentation?
Once I saw Rob Bartlett, we went, ugh. Because I know it's going to be a struggle when he's on color commentating or whatever he's doing. He's just there like to be the edgy adult entertainment. They're appealing. Raw is going to appeal more towards the adults, and they're supposed to be a little edgier with the show. Macho Man's role, he's a babyface, and he's the homer, right? He's the guy that's rooting for all the baby faces and hates all the heels, and Vince is just Vince is Vince, and he's steering the ship. So I mean, I don't mind Vince and Macho as much. I just wish they had Bobby in that role. That was just a waste of whatever it is, 5 weeks or 6 weeks, or hope it's not too long. I remember it not being too long with Rob Bartlett there, but I just reminding me how I didn't know who this guy was when I was a kid. And I didn't find his jokes funny at all. I thought they they took away so much from the matches.
I mean, not even one joke was funny.
No, not one at all.
I've never seen a comedian in a role just go over. Like he's like it was like Brandon Belt against Clayton Kershaw, like 0 for 52 with like 35 strikeouts. Like that was Bartlett's performance on this show. And a couple of things immediately come to the forefront, which is he has no idea what this product is. He doesn't know wrestling at all. No. So I'm assuming that Vince thought, well, I will guide him through this stuff and sort of I will be able to make him and produce him into someone good. Did not happen this first show. I don't really remember much after this, so as we get to the next shows, we'll sort of see if he improves or not. But he also makes fun of all the talent. Like he was, he did Yokozuna's about the diaper and about how fat he is, and the Steiner brothers, he can't tell them apart, and Rick Steiner is so hairy and just like really bad. And then the worst part of this whole show is I'm trying to remember. I think it's during the Shawn Michaels and the Max Moon match, which is actually a match that gets a good amount of time. And it's a pretty good match for a TV match. He decides to do a Mike Tyson impersonation, and for like the first 10 seconds, I was like, okay, this is not terribly horrible. His Tyson impersonation isn't really good. And then he decided to do it for like 5 minutes. And I was just like, if I had a channel changer in my hand, I would have turned it off. Like I obviously stuck with it because we were talking about it, but that would have like sent me over the deep end. I was just like, unbelievable. How do you not produce him down to stop doing the stupid thing that is like just irritating everybody?
Yeah, how does Vince not take his pencil and just stab him right in the hand, like just tell him to shut up? Like, that's what I would have done. But yeah, that's definitely, it was a good television match that was ruined by the commentary, and even Yoko. Like, you have Yoko, who's still very fresh. I think Yoko did. I think he showed up like November of '92 or maybe October of '92. So he's still, he still is basically squashing people, right? And here he squashes Koko Beware. So like, here's where you want to get over Yoko, right? Here's who you want to put him over. But Bartlett has to make his jokes about the weight of Yokozuna, about Japanese jokes about sushi, about the thong of his gear, and it's just like, dude, come on, man. Like, you're building this guy up to win the WWF title in a few months, and you're having this jerk off say these horrible jokes, these racist jokes. Ugh, it was just, 2019 is very just off-putting.
I did like the fact that, because I'm thinking about like, okay, Vince, obviously Vince knows where everything's going. I thought it was kind of cool that the guy that's going to main event WrestleMania as the challenger is in the first match on your big live TV debut. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, no, it's smart. You want to keep featuring that guy. And like I said, the Yokozuna story, as a kid, I just never thought that he would. I thought he'd just be the monster built up for the hero to beat, not be the monster that wins the title.
Yeah, me too.
and holds it for a very long time.
And we'll talk about it as we get toward the Royal Rumble, but the entire time when I'm watching this, and I thought I was like a pretty smart fan back then, I'm like, oh, Savage and Bret Hart at WrestleMania, huh? That's actually pretty intriguing. I just didn't think Yoko was going to win, and I felt stupid afterward, but I was like, wow, I kind of want to see Savage and Bret Hart.
Not as dumb as Savage trying to cover you for the pin in the Royal Rumble. Not gonna work out well.
So I think the thing that also stood out to me, and this is kind of like them trying to figure their way around doing a live show. And was it fully live? Was it actually 100% live?
I'm not sure. That's the question for Big Dave. I'm not sure on that one.
Yeah. Because I know that this in week 2, they actually taped 2 shows, because the third show is a tape show because I think they're out on the West Coast or something.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when that airs, and I have a special moment regarding that show in a couple weeks. So.
And so, you like, for instance, the running gag and the entire night is Bobby Heenan trying to get in the building and Sean Mooney, getting befuddled by not being able to recognize him in different outfits and drag and stuff. But Heenan is shown on television trying to get in, saying that, he needs to be on the show, he needs to be at Raw, and Sean Mooney saying like, no, he can't go in. And then, like, when you see that segment, and then they do the match, and then it's cut to a taped promo with Bobby Heenan. So that was a little weird. That was like, okay, you guys haven't sort of figured this whole thing out yet, like, as far as what you want this show to be. Because obviously Heenan, he teases Narcissus, who's obviously going to be Lex Luger. And so he does a promo there, but we had just seen him 5 minutes earlier trying to get in the building, and he wasn't there. So, I mean, Vince did say it was a taped promo, but it was a little weird. Like, they wouldn't do stuff like that anymore because, they understand the whole thing a little bit better. But that was sort of jarring. And then they had a couple other ones like that too, where, Tatanka does a taped thing, and then there's a couple of other taped things that don't really fit into what they're trying to do, but they're doing this thing on the fly for the first time. It was almost like a pilot. Like, it was almost like, or I'm sorry, it was a pilot, but it was almost like they didn't do like a test run of the show, and like this was like their test run, like live on television.
Yeah, that's definitely what it felt like. And I totally forgot that Lex Luger's original name was Narcissus.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And thank God they changed that.
Okay, so let's talk about the matches. So 4 matches on the show. We already talked about Yoko versus Coco. So if you want to, if you go to like bar trivia and it's like wrestling trivia night, that could be a question that you have an answer to. What is the very first match in Monday Night Raw history? It would be Yoko versus Coco. And you know what else? Rob Bartlett had the easiest joke if you want to make fun of Yokozuna, because Yoko Ono is kind of like the most well-known Yoko out there. He never said Yoko Ono one time. I was pretty frustrated by that.
He's a hack.
Okay, so now let's go to the second match, which is actually pretty interesting because Vince gets the Steiners. And the Steiner brothers are now on WWE TV. They face off against the great team of the Executioners, who are not Playboy Buddy Rose. It is Dwayne Hardy and Barry Gill.
Yep.
I think the Executioners actually go on the road as the Executioners as well.
I'm sure they have. They wrestle. They work multiple matches on TV tapings because they could do the gimmick with the mask, and they also do the gimmicks, just as themselves. So, and Steiners did what they do: beat up job guys.
Yeah, destroy job guys.
Destroy them, and like it's like when they get in the ring, it's like, man, you can just see their eyes, like, oh man, this is fun. And it was nice to see Steiners. It's been a while since I've seen like a Steiner match like that. Just a nice squash, and that God, man, dude, that upside down into the corner that Rick Steiner does, it just slams a guy midsection first in the top turnbuckle.
Yeah.
God, that one looked rough, and like it looked so rough that Rick kind of like looked and like started laughing a little bit, like, oh shit, I really just beat the shit out of this guy. It was cool to see the Steiner brothers again.
What did you think about their run in WWE? Because it seemed
letdown.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like a letdown. It was almost like Vince didn't really know exactly the right way to book them, or maybe it's just tag teams were never the priority, I guess, because he had all the great ones, and they were sort of mid card, upper mid card stuff, but there was a clear it was very clear how they got over in WCW and became like the it tag team, right? That whole playbook was there, and Vince, it was almost like Vince was like, well, this is just the way that we book babyface tag teams, and we're not going to change the way that we do it. And thus, the Steiners never really got over to. I almost feel like it was like a wasted. What were they there for? Like 2 years?
Yeah, something like that. I think, 2 years, because by the time, you're right, because like the end of '92 to like the end of '94 or summer of '94, basically, I think they were gone. So a little less than 2 years, but I think it might have been one of those things where it's not Vince's creation.
Yeah, and
so thus he's not really that invested. I don't know if he saw much personality in Scott, and at the time Scott didn't have much personality, but he was kind of just like, at least we didn't see it on camera then. But Rick always had a personality. I think Rick could have been a great WWF character, for Vince, the dog-faced gremlin. They never really built up a quest for them to win a championship to where like you got invested behind it. Like they first won the titles at some random house show, and they flipped it a couple times with Money Incorporated. Like that didn't even air on TV, so like it wasn't really, or a pay-per-view. It wasn't really built up to where like, oh man, Steiners are going for the championship for the first time, and and like it's going to be a big match, and they win it, and you remember it. Like it just was like they kind of won it on the house show. And then they had that really great match with the Heavenly Bodies at SummerSlam '93. And then they quickly, soon after that, lost it to the Quebecers, and they just really didn't do much after that.
So there was also this running gag all show long with Doink the Clown. And a lot of people really like that character. I was never a big fan of the clown. It's just not sort of my style of what I like about wrestling. But it did allow Bartlett to make some jokes about the clown, and he starts calling him Dork the Clown, and he makes like a dick joke that goes like I think Vince like started talking right as he's like basically making a dick joke about the word dork. And I don't know if it went over Vince's head or Vince just started talking and didn't hear him, but that kind of went. Bartlett definitely tried to go there, and no one really paid attention to it. But what did you think of them just showcasing Doink like all show long?
Well, Doink was a favorite of Vince, right? That character, getting that off the ground. Just establishing a new character, because Doink just started too in late '92, so he's a still fresh new character. And the antics of Doink. When I was a kid, and when I first saw Doink, it was immediately Paul Bear status for me. Like, oh no, like this is, if my dad's not going to show up while I'm watching Paul Bear cut this promo with Undertaker and make fun of me watching this wrestling crap, he's going to show up during the Doink match, right? And like, oh my God, what is this crap you watching? This isn't that, right? But I end up liking the heel Doink character, like the music, the creepiness. I mean, Matt Bourne was fantastic at that character, and then the double Doinks and stuff like that. I thought that was really cool. Once he turned babyface, I was out. I was tired of it within a few months. Yeah. And then he was just that, and he was around for a very, very long time after that. And I think the change, Matt Bourne, being fired and then putting multiple characters in that. I think Phil Apollo was a guy, and then there was, Steve Lombardi was a guy. It just for me never really connected. And then they had Dink and but at the time, I think it was a good move how they did it. They didn't have him wrestle a match on the first show, but they show him in the background and do his little wacky things, and they come on later in the end. I think that was a good move they did with him.
So Vince teases that there's an NFL player who wants to wrestle, and the guy's name is Mitch Farrat. Now, there was a sort of semi-famous football player who was a backup quarterback for the Washington Redskins, and then I think he became the starter. His name was Gus Farrat, and I was like, who's Mitch Farrat? And I looked him up. Buffalo Bills offensive lineman, but I don't remember if anything ever happened with Mitch Farrat.
Once I heard that on the show, I was like, yeah, that got dropped fast, because I don't remember ever hearing that name. Like, I don't remember anything about that guy wrestling or trying to wrestle.
And then Macho Man also mentions that baseball player Tito Landrum is in the office, and then is in the audience, and then he also used that to say, "See, anybody who's anybody is here," based off of Tito Landrum.
And you know who else was in the audience?
Who was in the audience?
A young Mikey Whipwreck in the front row going crazy.
That's awesome.
And another ECW alumni from way back when, I think it's one of his buddies growing up, Paul Loria, wasn't there too as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so the match we talked about where Bartlett kind of ruined it was Shawn Michaels and Max Moon. And you can sort of tell, like, if you want to do your own sort of rating system, if Vince McMahon is on commentary, the amount of times he goes, "What a maneuver," meaning he doesn't know what the hell to call the move that just happened, probably going to get a pretty darn good match. Like, the more "what a maneuvers," the better for match. So I almost wonder if, like, we should create a, like, "what a maneuver" ratio and see if it holds up to our likes of how good the match was.
Or a drinking game.
Oh my God. HBK, he comes out, and it's the Sherry theme song, the Sherry version of the theme song. They're leading into Royal Rumble, where he is facing Marty Jannetty, and part of the storyline is which corner is Sherry going to be in. I always thought it was silly when they did stuff like this, because it was pretty clear that, Marty's going to come out looking dumb at the end. But there's a weird instance in this match where I think it's Bartlett asks Vince if Shawn's going to be at the Rumble, and Vince is like, I'm not sure, it's to be announced, or he says something, and I'm like, I swear it's already been stated that he's facing Jannetty at the show. Like, that was kind of, I wonder if Vince like got caught off guard or something.
He probably did. It was, but they took so much away from the match. Like, and these guys were having a good match, and this is probably one of the only matches that of note of Max, the Max Moon character. Right, it had to be this show here.
Yeah. My favorite part of this match is when Shawn hits the super kick or the sweet chin music, and he doesn't slap his leg. That was my favorite part.
Go figure.
What did you think of his finisher at this point?
I like the crotch suplex. I thought that was pretty. I mean, it sounds kind of weird saying that, but the crotch hold suplex, it's a good move. It's basically just the angle slam, really.
Yeah,
it's a nice suplex. It really is, and I think people should bring it back. And a lot of people now, they do the angle slam, right? If you're going to do that kind of suplex, it's a big angle slam, which is a fantastic suplex in itself as well. But yeah, I remember he had that. He had the pile driver too. A lot of people don't remember that. Early on, so he was kind of finding his way with this with the Heartbreak Kid character, and he's finally settled on the super kick, which he was the best at it because he finished guys with one.
Yep,
that's why he was the best.
Yep. And so it's pretty clear that there's a lot in good old HBK's future here. Vince is putting him over. He looks great. He looks like a superstar. I think he's the one guy on this show when I was done watching and I went, okay, like he looks like he is someone that I want to turn the TV back on. I want to come back next week if Shawn Michaels is on the show. Obviously, The Undertaker's in the main event, but The Undertaker's a different style of character. He's only so they're about a year and a half, not even a year and a half, just over a year into the. No, it is. Undertaker came in 1990, right? So SummerSlam, Survivor Series 1990. So we're a little bit over 2 years in the Undertaker run, and so he's not like that legendary character quite yet, but he's definitely like part of the new wave of WWE, and he's going to be, already is one of their top guys. He faces off against the great Damien Demento. Tell me about Damien Demento.
I first saw Damien Demento when he was Mondo Clean in this promotion, two promotions. You remember the old Sunshine Network or the Sports Channel Network?
Yeah, the Florida stuff. Yeah,
so they would have like various different independent wrestling shows on, and I would catch like IWCC. Before that was ICW, then became IWCCW because they merged with World Class Championship Wrestling that never went anywhere. And then there was South Atlantic Pro Wrestling, which I actually liked, and there was the International Wrestling Federation of Florida, and it was just done at the Universal Studios, and so it had a pretty good production behind it. They had all these like knockoff guys. They had the Dynamites, which like the Rock and Roll Express. They had the Bad Boys, right, the Nasty Boys. You had Cliff Anderson. And the main heel, the champion was Mondo Clean, and he had the same exact look as he had in WWE. He had a very distinct voice and promo. He was definitely a lot muscular than he was in this match here. I've noticed his body changed greatly since prices are probably a little hard on drug testing at this point, right? So yeah, he was just I think Mondo Clean / Damien Demento would have been really good for them in the 80s. Like, and a good guy that's built up and does a little circuit with Hogan on the house shows and loses, because he really didn't know much of note. I remember when he came in, I was excited because I knew who he was. I remember seeing him on the shows, and I was like, oh, cool, they got Mondo Clean and Damien Demento from the outer reaches of your mind, or something like that.
So weird.
So weird, but I kind of digged it. Like when I managed this team called Ego with AJ Kirsch and Nate Rules. Nate Rules had this Damien Demento kind of look, like he got all jacked and he had like the Road Warrior Hawk spiked haircut that he kept on even after we wrestled, which was funny. I mean, I hope he doesn't have it anymore, but like Nate is a special character, right? God bless him. I love that guy, man. And so I took a line from WCW Halloween Havoc 1990, right? It's like, and they were promoting the commercial for Halloween Havoc, and it's like borderlining on the edge of insanity. So like when my intro, because I would do the Jim Cornette thing, introducing your tag team, and so for Nate Rules, I would say, and borderlining on the edge of insanity, Nate Rules, and the only person that got that reference was my good friend Tom Castor. God, the man. Like, and it was like, all right, cool, like, yeah, like, and I decided to use that in my intro, and I always got to kick it. I would love to say that line during that intro for Nate Rules. So
that's awesome.
So I wish I had Out of Reaches. I wish I remembered Out of Reaches of Your Mind, because I would use that too, because I loved it for that character. It works, right? He's a very wacky, crazy character.
Yeah.
It just he just came late. He should have been an 85, 86, right, or 87. But
so I think the thing that, as I'm watching this match, the thing that I thought was not that this is like a main event, but it is a match where someone like Damien Demento, the only time you would see him on TV is winning squash matches. And yeah, if you went to a house show in your hometown, it's possible he would lose to one of the hot baby faces, but you would never see him lose on TV. And so with Monday Night Raw, they have to have somebody compelling in the main event, and you're putting him against The Undertaker, and he's going to lose the match. But in the previous iteration of WWF, we as fans are probably never going to really see him lose unless we saw a live house show match, or maybe at a pay-per-view he would lose. But really, like, because of what they're trying to do with Monday Night Raw, you want a somewhat competitive match, and thus he's got to lose and do the job. Yeah,
that's what he was there for. And I mean, other than this match and a quick appearance in the 93 Rumble, like, he wasn't on TV much after this, and I think he just kind of did stuff on house shows that was never made tape, and he just ended up being released. He's I don't know if you remember, like, about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little longer, like, he had like his own YouTube channel, and he would cut like these very like anti WWE promos and just really talk trash about stuff. And he would be in this whole character, get that really unique voice, and he'd be in this Damien Demento character, Mondo Clean character, and so I don't know, maybe he was a headache too. You know what I mean? Like, I can imagine, just from those promos, from the stuff on YouTube he did, I can just imagine he can kind of be difficult to work with. And they're like, you know what do we need this guy for, right?
Yeah. We need to get him on the podcast, is what you're saying.
Too probably, just find him. So what do you mean I'm a character? Goddamn. Oh shoot, sorry.
So the one thing that I thought was, so we talk about kind of like first impressions, and you have your first opportunity to make this big splash. Bret Hart is not on this show, and he's your world champion.
Yep. That was interesting. But I think what they're trying to do is, people know Bret Hart, right? Let's use this vehicle, this new show, to feature what we have coming in the future. Yoko, Razor had a promo, right? So, the Steiner brothers at the time are still new, so they're featured them, and you're building up Shawn Michaels as one of your top heels. So, yeah, I thought that was unique too. I would definitely have had Bret on it. I probably would have had Bret in the main event, honestly. Like,
yeah,
Damien Demento,
absolutely.
But I think maybe they just thought, Vince, Undertaker Monster versus Damien Demento Monster is just kind of how they booked back then. So I think that's what they went with. But you know,
So before they get to the final segment, Vince does like the weirdest thing, and he says next week on Raw, Woody Allen versus Mia Farrow.
yeah.
What in the hell was he thinking?
Well, it's the Rosie O'Donnell. What they do like 10 years later?
Donald
Rosie
Trump.
O'Donnell. And yeah, Donald Trump, right? So they do that. So it's basically the same thing. Like he's trying to get on something that's a hot media topic right now. The whole media, you know, Woody Allen and his, you know, that whole story with his, you know, daughter, now wife, and Mia Farrow and all that stuff. And so they, you know, that was a hot topic in the news, right? That was very big. So he's jumping on it a little bit to get some rub off that kind of story and just kind of make some guys attention. But no one picked up. The media probably said that. That's bullshit.
Yeah, this is stupid.
Yeah, but it's Raw, right? That's considered Raw. Don't forget also about the girls, right?
The Ring Girls. The Ring Girls. Which
is funny because I remember, God, a couple years ago, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I remember Jeff Cobb, you know, stayed over at my house for a show. I think it might be for a premiere show or something like that. And we were watching like old Raws from '93, and we would just say she was '90s hot. Like so we had like the hashtag '90s hot for a while. It was pretty funny.
So the end of the show is Doink is out to do interview, and he's bad mouthing Crush. So Crush comes out with that terrible accent. Like he didn't really speak like that, right?
I know. I should ask I should ask Cobb. I should ask Kaimana, my buddy from Hawaii, from great guy, great wrestler. I should ask him about the Crush promo of the opening night of the first night of Raw, because I know, like, he is really heavy on because of the Hawaiian Crush, right?
Yeah,
Crush.
Yeah.
So they're like really like getting that over. And but it's like it's just like off-putting now. Like it's like it's, you know. Did you like Kona Crush?
I would say that it was too. It was almost a little bit too childish for me at that point, because, you know, I'm already like, you know, what am I, 16 or 17 at this point? It was a little childish, but you know, the feud that he had with Savage the following year, I kind of got into him a little bit. I thought that was okay, and yeah, like, you know, I think he was really good in like one of the Super Nintendo games, though. Like he was like a really good guy to use. But yeah, I mean, not. I mean, you know, he was always sort of like, gosh, if he got it together, he could be really a really big star, because he was so big and strong, and he was, you know, a pretty good looking guy, but he was just kind of like colorless in a way. Where
though he had bright color.
Yeah, right. Like he had the shiny orange and stuff, but just like his personality was so colorless. Like he didn't ever come across as like charismatic.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked him in when he was a New Demolition member. I thought he was.
That was probably his best. That was probably the best usage of him.
I'm probably like one of the few guys I actually really dug a third member of Demolition, and I know, like, I really like Demolition, but I thought he added some usefulness to that team. You know, it didn't last long, and then he went back to Portland. Probably just like, we don't have enough for you right now. Go back and work the indies in Portland, and then, you know, fresh up your game, we'll bring it back, and they did. And I remember being excited that, Rush is back, but I didn't like. I was excited to see him back. He shows up, and I remember like thinking like, not digging the bright orange and purple, and then that head Crush finisher.
Yeah,
I just not. Then all of a sudden I was like out on Crush. I was like, never mind. But I did enjoy the heel turn with Savage. I remember it being a really good beatdown on Savage. That whole like throwing him his post, you know, throat first on the guardrail, stuff like that. And I liked when he started wearing the face paint again. I got into him a little more, but Crush always seemed like a guy for me that always like didn't reach his potential that I thought he was going to be.
Yeah. No, I agree. So there's a funny little write up in the Observer about the show. Dave writes that one of his readers happened to be running by the Manhattan Center between periods of the Rangers game on that show, and so Sean Mooney asked him to stay and pretend that they were buying tickets so that they were the people buying tickets for next week as Heenan tried to get into the building dressed as the rabbi.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so Heenan dressed up as a woman, as Rob Bartlett's aunt, and then as the rabbi, as I think Rob Bartlett's uncle or something, trying to get in. And then show ends, and then of course they let Heenan in the building, but the show was over. So that was kind of the running gag of the week. And look, like, Heenan was fantastic, right? Like, it was probably a poor usage of him, but he was like 100% like all the way in on that, what they were trying to have him do.
But it was like also like when he would do these segments, it reminded you how entertaining it was.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
And then they go to the matches and we're stuck with that Bartlett jerk off, and it's like, dude, come on, man. I know you wanted to change things up, but this is not the way to do it. You know, like, put Bobby in there. Bobby playing off Macho, playing off Vince would have been good, really good.
It would have been really good.